I'm Nick Hernandez, and you're listening to the Positivity Matters podcast. On this program, we look at the world through the lens of well being. And today, I am happy to have on the program Jarrod Elwell. He is with the Federal Reserve Branch and is working in community development in a variety of strength based ways outside of the workplace. There is a coaching career as well. Jarrod, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate you having me on the show.
That's my extremely brief introduction. Perhaps you'd tell us a little bit more. How did you come to have this strength based focus and an appreciation for positive psychology? And what is happening with the Fed in that?
Yeah, so I do work for the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. I'm the district, the community development district manager. So I manage a few community development regional managers, and I've been in community development for over 30 years. But really, it's been my entire life. I attribute my parents with a lot of the foundation for the work that I do today. My father was a police officer, community policing, and chaired the housing authority, and had all sorts of other hats that he wore in community. And my mother was a community development social worker working with adjudicated youth. And together, she also wore a lot of hats, PTA and softball team, and did therapeutic foster care, all of those things. So all of that has contributed to me wanting to make a difference in the world and make the community around me better. And um, at the Fed, I work with folks in the nonprofit, private, public, nonprofit, and philanthropic sectors to advance the economic resilience of and mobility of low and moderate income communities. So I engage communities throughout the fifth district, but I primarily focus on Virginia and Washington D.C. So I engage communities. I do a lot of sensing, which is essentially listening. But to do that, I have to be adept at asking the right questions, and then I share perspectives that can inform our research and programs. But I think the most exciting part of my role and job is that of a connector and a convener. So I do convene lots of folks. I connect folks with. I listen for challenges and opportunities, and then connect folks with resources that can help them further achieve their goals. And it's been an evolution for me. I am a big fan of motivational interviewing and asset-based community development, appreciative inquiry, and collective impact. And I think there's a continuum there. It's incredibly important to me to connect with a person on an individual level. Relationships are fundamental to all of those four approaches to community development. And I think it starts with that individual. So that's the motivational interviewing piece. And I know it has a history in a clinical setting, and I have adapted it to community development. And then from there, you move into working with the community and understanding what the commonalities are, what the shared vision is. And I think that speaks a lot to asset-based community development. And then the appreciative inquiry is once we identify who those stakeholders are that are going to work together to achieve positive change. There's that organizational development piece, and I think appreciative inquiry plays a huge role. And then collective impact provides a framework for folks to set that shared vision, establish the shared metrics that they're going to be working towards, a cadence, information sharing, all of those things, and evaluation. So that's the foundation for my the evolution and approach that I have towards community development.
How about coaching?
Coaching. I love coaching. My father was a youth football coach. He coached me and my brother, and I got to see. long term, the impact that he had on the kids that I competed with or shared, was on a team with, and how influential he was in their lives. And I've had that same opportunity. I started coaching wrestling at a really young age, and I wrestled youth, high school, and college, and have been able to coach youth, high school, and college. I'm still coaching today, and I've been asked to perform weddings of kids, former athletes that I coached, and be godparents to children, and just continue to be a play a role in their lives. I have a 30th birthday. Two of my former athletes are turning 30, and their one spouse, one partner reached out and said, "Hey, we'd love for you to be there for them." And those are opportunities that I will never pass up if I can attend and continue to be a part of their lives. So connecting with kids, serving as a role model and mentor to them, helping them navigate life, helping equip them with the tools to be successful, be whole people and successful contributing members of society is a value that my parents have instilled in me, and I take it incredibly seriously. And I'll share that this is one of those things that my wife embraces fully, and then at the same time she's like, "But does it have to take up that much time in your life?" Yes, unfortunately, that's how this works. Yes,
It gets to take up that much time.
it gets to, yeah. And believe me, if I could, it would take up more.
Nice. Thank you for taking the VIA survey of character strengths. I see yours came out as fairness, love of learning, kindness, spirituality, and hope. Um, do some of those how do those resonate for you, and how do one or more of those kind of play out? How do you see those playing out in your life?
So the fairness piece, I've always had this incredibly high sensitivity to justice, and I think some of that goes back to me being uh, where I was raised and how I was raised. I mentioned my father was a police officer, my mother was a community development social worker. My sensitivity was enhanced at a really young age by understanding differences and what differential treatment is. My mother's Puerto Rican, born and raised, and I grew up in a very white community in Vermont. So I got to see and hear how people treated my mother differently, and I just, at a really young age, became sensitive to it. And then, as I started growing and figuring out a career, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Um, and I served in the military with the Judge Advocate General's Corps as a non-commissioned officer. So I was a legal non-commissioned officer, and then decided I didn't want to go to law school. I chose to go into working with youth that were in the juvenile justice system, and that just continued to develop and blossom. I worked in fair housing and civil rights, conducting investigations of discrimination, and then worked in homelessness, affordable housing development, social services, and was able to put all of that together, providing technical assistance and helping build the capacity of communities and organizations. And then I came over to the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, and am really focused on advancing the economic resilience and mobility of low and moderate income communities. So again, that sense of fairness, the love of learning. Oh, I love learning. I remember when I was finishing up my undergrad degree, and my mother asked me a question, and I said, "Gosh, if I could be a student the rest of my life, I would do that." And she was like, "What?" I was like, "No, I love learning." Um, Kindness, I think it's a daily. I'm intentional daily about living my life with kindness and being kind to others, and then the spirituality piece is the fourth strength. I understand that there's so much more to life than me, and I'm just a small part of this world and this universe, and uh, pretty grounded in my own faith. Uh, and then my fifth strength is hope, and I have learned over the years that it's really tough for anybody to improve their own situation if they don't have hope. So whether that's the individual or a neighborhood or a community or an organization, so they all play a big role in my everyday life.
Thank you for sharing about the strengths. Part of why I like to talk about that is that if there's anybody listening that is strengths blind, here is an entry point into being able to build a good friendship with ourselves. That's sometimes the last thing that we notice about ourselves is our strengths. I'm speaking for myself. This is it was a genuinely novel idea that I had strengths, and I found that out around the age of in my latter 20s in 2006. And uh, I just, any chance I get to talk about strengths, I want to take that opportunity and encourage others to try that. You can try that as well at www.viacharacter.org. The VIA is an acronym that stands for Values in Action. And I think that's kind of for me, been one of the big takeaways in building a sense of hope. If we look at our strengths and then from that create a value, put it in our own words, we then have a well of meaning to generate goals from. And the hope science idea then suggests also thinking about meaningful pathways aligned with values and then to take action. And that sets up a cycle: values, goals, pathways, action. Reflect on values, refine every now and then, and keep going. So that's kind of my hope, is that people, if they haven't yet found their strengths, that this may be the occasion for them to do so, and then to channel that into practical hope, and hopefully come to a state where we're continuously able to formulate and enact meaningful goals to ourselves. I think that is kind of the essence of flourishing. And then there's, like, I think a lot more nuance that can get woven into that thread. That's me just, I don't know, riffing a little bit, but what does human flourishing mean to you? What are the things that you notice about that? And yeah.
I think that for an individual, or in my case, I spend a lot of time working with communities. For them to flourish, there needs to be an understanding of, like you said, you start with the strengths, right? And we spend so much time, uh, and we're trying to evolve, focused on barriers and problems and challenges rather than that place of strength and understanding what our assets are. I think if folks did that, if they were able to support folks to understand what their strengths are, what their assets are, it creates a vision for the future that doesn't have a ceiling. Whereas when we approach a community from that deficit based approach, we're trying to get them to a point in their development. But there is a cap on that ceiling just by the very definition of a deficit based approach. So, what will make us whole, right? If we are able to say, hey, these are your assets, and I've had experiences where I've walked into a community that's been overstudied and over engaged, and they're suffering from planning fatigue. And the last thing they want to hear is me come in and say, what are the problems in this community? And instead walking in and saying, what do you love about your community? And I did this probably 10 years ago in a community in Illinois, and the whole audience, folks of color and 60s and 70s, maybe even early 80s. And when I walked in the room, they had their arms crossed and they were ready for the same old conversation. And by asking them that question within 10 minutes, we had multiple folks in the room, tears streaming down their face, talking about what they love about their community and what the potential of the community is and all of the assets in the community. And it was classic appreciative inquiry. So those are some of my initial thoughts.
Beautiful. One of my community building friends, I'd seen a project that he was involved with that was meant to foster the well-being of rural communities. And there was a sociologist in one of the DC institutions that had heard about his work somehow and noticed that, well, typically community development things get developed in urban centers and taken into rural areas. And I guess this person thought, what if we tried it in reverse? And this is Mylan Wall with the Heartland Center for Leadership Development. And he was, I think, working with, I think he said maybe like, I don't know the number of neighborhoods in the DC area, but it was kind of similar. Sometimes he would work with tribes and to similar effect. And one comment that I remember him making is that people would approach him after and say, "You're the first person who ever asked about our strengths." Kind of beautiful. Um,
And simple.
yeah, yeah. So that
Yeah.
I feel I feel grateful for whoever that professor was because that then brought him to the attention of the local NeighborWorks nonprofit, and they had him do a couple years of neighborhood leadership training. And it happened right after I learned about my strengths, and in one of the sessions we started talking about, like, think about a time when you were in community when you felt most alive. And then it was the appreciative inquiry process, unbeknownst to me, but I felt an incredible sense of like elevation and like positivity, inexplicable. And
Yeah.
afterwards, asked the facilitator, like, what just happened? What was that? And she said, oh, that's appreciative inquiry. So then it's like, now I've got this strength psychology framework and like an appreciative inquiry framework. And it's like the world became extra awesome because one of mine is futuristic. And it's like, wow, if we just do more of that, like, what kind of world would we have then?
It's a much more uplifting path forward for sure.
Yeah.
We
But
do a
it's
lot of
not,
work in we do a lot of work in rural communities too. So I've spent most of my adult life working in urban communities, and when I joined the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, I knew that there was a big emphasis on rural communities. So there's been a bit of a learning curve to understand the differences, but I will say the single biggest thing is the hope. And without hope, it's really tough to engage a community um, and identify what their strengths are and what the possibilities are for that community.
there's I think recently, validation of a shared hope scale. The initial researcher, Rick Snyder, he had looked up to a Carl Menninger, and in a conversation with Menninger, Menninger suggested focus on the cognitive aspects of hope. One of his students recently came out with the like an emotional hope scale, and then the shared hope scale also through a different lineage that emerged outside of that direct chain from Rick Snyder. And it feels like with all those things combined, the cognitive, the emotional, and the collective hope, it feels like it's almost ready for sort of like I don't know, like sort of like an evidence based path toward human flourishing with tools like asset based community development, motivational interviewing, appreciative inquiry, and collective impact. I think that is like brilliant how you put all that together. I've heard of all those things, but I had even my connector mind had not yet like pieced them together like that. So that is like that's like my the maximizer when it sees a good idea, it like gets really happy. So thank you for the this daily dose of joy. Like it's yeah, I don't know how a Tuesday could get any better, but we'll see.
Yeah, as you're describing the types of hope, I'm envisioning like this scorecard, this virtual scorecard in my brain that as I engage communities, I can start to assess and evaluate where they are in each of those categories and then put together a plan, right? To help them gain more hope in the areas where they would benefit the most. It's interesting.
Yeah. The hope science hope the part that stood out to me was that this emphasis on goals thinking and pathways thinking, like intentional uses of the imagination, and the part that to me was like, well, what makes a goal meaningful? Well, like if it connects with strengths, if it connects with values, and then the question, one of the questions that I asked you, I'll just pose to the audience here. That is, how many goals can you generate from a value? To me, the answer is an infinite number. And I'd seen a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. talking about infinite hope. And it was like, if someone has deep faith, my hunch is that it's easier to feel a connection to infinite hope. But I was thinking like the opposite case. What if you don't? It's like just that right there by, I would say, saying yes to a value in a person's life or in a community's life, it opens a road to infinite hope. That, so, anyways, yeah, things like that get me really excited. But speaking of the future, uh, what do you see on the horizon? And maybe we were just speaking it into existence there a moment ago with the hope scales, and uh, that's yeah. I think sometimes what I like about the hope scales and the hope science is that it's actionable. Like I think mental well being is basically that mental well being itself is that ability to be able to formulate and enact meaningful goals. I think that's a part of it. The emotional well being is also a part of it, but I think the emotional well being is kind of like the cart and the hope is the horse. Maybe there's a better metaphor, but
You do like your metaphors.
my apologies. My apologies
No,
to
it's all good.
horses, to
All good.
sandwiches, anything that
Yeah,
gets
yeah.
brought into a metaphor. My apologies.
I think about the bootstrap theory. So we've talked talked about the evolution of theories and approaches to community development and individual development. The bootstrap theory is just bend over and pick yourself up by, just make your life better. Just do what you got to do. And you and I know that there's so much between the individual and them working towards goals and having hope, right? There's trauma, there's life experience, there's all of those things. Those, it can be addictions or mental illness that prevent folks from even getting to that starting line. And all of those things that I've talked about are about self-driven, uh, citizen-led, community-led approaches to community development. And we know that work has to be done before folks can even get to the point where they can lead, right? If you can't address your own daily life functions, it's really difficult to then start thinking about other people and the community and what's in the best interest of the masses. So there's much work to be done, um, on the individual, and it starts with relationships and engaging folks one on one. And if you can't, the expression of relationships move at the speed of trust. Well, how do you develop trust? Well, you have to show up. You have to be authentic. You have to be honest. You have to deliver on what you've committed to deliver on, and you have to do it consistently. And depending on the individual or the community, that stuff can take time. It can take a lot of time, but that doesn't mean that folks don't want a better life for themselves or their communities. It just means we have more work to do.
Indeed. You mentioned a coach to me earlier, Cale Sanderson. Did I say that right?
Yes, Cale Sanderson.
So let's say you made Cale Sanderson like mayor of some community and he applied the exact same approach. Like, tell us. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I'll tell us about what he's doing and then what that would be like if he were mayor somewhere.
Interesting. So Cale Sanderson was a four-time national champion in wrestling for Iowa State. He was the head coach at Iowa State, took over the job at Penn State University. And they've won, of the 16 years he's been the head coach at Penn State, they've won 13 national titles. And what I am most impressed with is the the attitude of the athletes that he's coaching. So those kids live in positive psychology. That's where they live. Everything that they do is from a place of appreciation and gratitude. Um, they are there are kids in that Penn State wrestling room that are the second best kids in the country in that weight class. But they would rather be the second best kid in that wrestling room than be second place at the national tournament, because they know that that is the environment that will help them be the best version of themselves that they can possibly be. And if Cale was the mayor of a city or a town and he was able to get everybody to believe, um, in that theory, that approach to life, that would be a thriving and flourishing community like I don't think we've seen before. It would be pretty amazing.
Well, you heard it here first, folks.
Cale Sanderson for mayor.
That was yeah, that was just a test. I'm taking it to president next. So,
Okay.
oh, that's yeah. Play, playing around with the economy. I've thought about there's, the material economy, and, thank you, Fed, for helping to create some stability in that. And then
We're
there's also, I
trying.
think,
We're trying.
yeah, yeah, it's like, yeah, there's like I think a psychological economy of as well. Like there's a book that came out here by the one of the creator of the Strengths Finder, Don Clifton, and his grandson Tom Rath, called "How Full Is Your Bucket?" And it's that we can emotional well-being is like an open bucket that we can fill it, and we can take from it from others. And the interesting thing that they point out is that when we fill someone else's bucket, our bucket's a little more full as well. So it's the place where 1 plus 1 could equal 3 in the psychological uh, economy. And I was thinking from economics, there's like I think they talk about like comparative advantage. So when like I think Adam Smith was talking about nations, when each country focuses on what it does best and then trade happens, like everyone's better overall. I was thinking the same thing like with strengths. Like, what if everybody focused on the good things they're good at and enjoyed? What would the world be like? And then if that scaled up through groups and communities, comparative, yeah, same kind of thing, like law of comparative advantage. But, put that with the 1 plus 1 equals 3, and it's like I would expect the results would be even, exponentially better when you have that thing that even in the material world, in the material economy works. uh it's like at the psychological level, it's like even more powerful.
Yeah, we apply the comparative advantage theory to communities when we approach them, particularly the rural communities who are trying to reinvent themselves. And it's like, one of the first questions we ask is, well, why was your community created? Like rural communities were created for very logical reasons, right? There's access to a river, there's access to a resource, there's access to something. Otherwise, people would not have congregated there. So, leveraging that as a foundation for what a community can become, that provides them with a comparative advantage. I wish that more folks would apply that theory to their own children. I watched my son, who's now 30, went through college, undergrad, and one of his closest friends was forced to go into a major because that's what his parents wanted him to do, rather than taking a look at that individual's strengths and interests and saying, hey, let's find a career that works for you, that works best for you, that leverages your strengths and your interests and your desires. And finally, by the time he was finishing his undergrad, he was like, he rebelled and said, no, I don't want to do this. I want to do this. And then it set him back at least a year because of, you know, all the credits that needed to be accumulated so that he could graduate and go on with his life. And he's now a he's now a pilot in the Marine Corps. He's not an engineer. He's a pilot in the Marine Corps. So I just wish that, even I wish I learned so much about strengths, individual strengths, at a younger age. And I think my wife and I did a pretty good job of identifying interests in our son, but not so much the strengths. So if I had a do over, that would be one thing that I would do over and do a better job of. But I do think that the information that you're sharing with folks not only helps folks become better people and more self-aware, but it can help them become better contributors to society and better parents or friends to folks.
I want to alleviate some I don't know what the word is, uh retrospective wishing that things may have
Pressure.
than other. Yeah, yeah. I want to reduce some pressure, and that is, I think, comparative advantage. If we emphasize the role of a mentor in community, then it looks something like parents, please keep this child alive. Teachers, I think they're the external sort of constructive kindness, like pouring knowledge and know how in. And then that leaves the space of, hey, kid, what are you interested in? Like you just whatever they're interested in. It's like the mentor can focus on that. And it's like probably the young person's strengths are going to come out more there around that interest that's of their own making, I'm guessing, uh than than those things that are suggested by either teachers or parents. So I am really big on like mentoring of of any sort. Yeah, and I think in so doing, there's something about that, like focusing on the strengths of the person. This is like interesting things happen to the mentor. Like it, I think, trains a person to kind of focus on strengths and assets, and then it feels pretty natural that if you are someone who's choosing to try to add to the well-being of a young person, then you're like, oh, they're part of this community, I'm part of this community. I wonder if there's anything in the community that would, if we were to like build that up, like this kid might flourish even more. And I think it's like it trains you to see the strengths in the community, I think, that the mentoring does. And then it's like you just see the potential, see the strengths, and it's like I think it creates maybe like a different kind of community builder that isn't necessarily starting with like, what's wrong? Where's the boat leaking? It's like you got to start with like, huh, what could this adventure be like? Yeah. So
I appreciate that. But as somebody that is committed to continuous improvement and self-improvement, it's one of those things where I can't help but look retrospectively
okay,
across my life and say, coulda, woulda, shoulda, and would do it if I had another chance. But
yeah.
I do continue to look forward and, yeah.
Well, I, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but I slipped another metaphor in there with the boat. So
Yeah.
we'll, you know, that ship has sailed, but yet it hasn't. So, okay, I, this, I think kind of kindness is there's three flavors of kindness: the constructive, playful, and compassionate. And with the, I think compassion is the first thing that comes to mind: prevention, alleviation of suffering. Constructive, I think the mentor is kind of like gets to focus on the strengths, like the internal construction, and then the playful kindness is like, how do we have fun? I think there's a variety of ways that communities do that. Like wrestling, it can be kind of a, and you could have a variety of reasons for doing that. Like you just might like to grow, and like here's a thing that you can grow, or it might be like the thrill of wrestling just in and of itself. It might be a kind of play. I think sports are a great example of getting to that constructive, playful kind of kindness. And it's like, uh, to be a coach, it's like it goes beyond just the technical. Here's how you do a takedown. Here's how you go to pin. It's like there's more to it. It's like you're like a mentor to many when you're a coach.
Totally.
And
I have a great example of this year. We just finished our season. We had a returning state champion who's one of the best high school kids in the country, like hands down. And right before the state finals this year, I'm in the tunnel with him. He looks at me and he goes, Coach, I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous. And I'm like, what are you nervous about? You've been here before. You've done this before. You've won this tournament before. So I don't understand, talk to me. Where is this coming from? And he said, I don't like being the center of attention. Okay. Well, that's a whole different animal. All right. So we are now going to work on that in the moment, right here, right now. Uh, and ultimately, he went out, he won the state title and went on to place at nationals and be an All-American and all of those things. But it's like, this is helping prepare him for when he faces anxiety and adversity later on in life, when he's as a partner in a relationship, as an employee, right? All of these things, he is going to be much better equipped to deal with all of those things because of the experiences that he's gone through, and with somebody that has been there and can coach him through it contemporaneously.
Awesome. uh, and the back on the boat. Uh,
Yeah.
this is kind of a, so I'll say like metaphorically, the compassionate to self. This is like kindness to self. It would be like paying attention to the seaworthiness of the vessel. The constructive kindness would be like improving the hydrodynamics of the boat, and then the playful would be like the joy of where we're going, and like the planning the adventure, and then the joy of sailing itself maybe is like the playful kindness. And I had I benefited from the philanthropy of an individual who'd had a positive experience on an outward bound sailing experience. Their mantra, to serve, to strive, and not to yield. That's the outward bound mantra. But the you're literally on a boat. It's like, I think when I was there, it was uh like rescue boats from old ocean liners. They were not hydrodynamic. They like they were they would not sink. That was like the main point of them. So uh what surprised me, I'd never heard this, I'd never thought of it, but I always just pictured like sailing, you got to have like the wind at your back. That was just kind of my assumption, but it's like somehow, thank you physics, like you can take an angle into the wind and you can go into the wind, like tack and jibe. These things are like 60 degrees to the wind coming at you. So it, it was more sideways progress than forward progress. But uh, it's like just that, just that thought that sometimes like, you know, what seems like a challenge can actually be like an opportunity for growth or something like that. Anyways, yeah. So there's another metaphor. I couldn't help it. I just yeah. Yeah. Well, we've talked about the future. We talked about the past. We talked about strengths. Is there anything that we haven't really addressed that just you would like to share about? What have I not asked that I should ask?
So I have all of this life experience of working in youth and juvenile justice and fair housing and civil rights and homelessness and affordable housing development and working with communities. Um, I think if I could sort of design my own job, my own role, I would I would be on that front line, entering communities and developing relationships and using asset-based community development and motivational interviewing and appreciative inquiry and all of those things. But I would also be coaching folks at a higher level to do that same kind of work. But the one thing that I don't necessarily get to do right now, which I would love to do, is to part-time embed myself in those communities and be a part of those communities. and be an on the ground resource for them. So that's a really difficult thing to do, is to do both of those things, especially in the context of the Federal Reserve Bank or the Federal Reserve System, because we are connectors and conveners, and we're not necessarily the on the ground folks that are addressing, you know, a community's goals. So
Mm.
I would, if I could do anything, it would be combining all of those. At my previous job, I did a lot of technical assistance and helping build capacity of individuals, communities, neighborhoods, organizations.
Mm.
Um, but there was a lot of travel involved, even though we would embed. And then the piece that was missing there was um, it was the coach. It was a lot of the coaching piece was missing. So if I could design it, that's how I would design it. I would be spread across sort of three different levels of community development.
I have an idea to run by you.
Yeah, run it.
Okay. All right. For the title, I'm picturing something like community builders, community building community.
Okay.
All like, and I want people to say that, all of it, every time they talk about the thing. I'll say it one more time. The community builders, community building community. I like things that say what they do,
Yeah.
but I mean, the bumper sticker, like, it's going to like take up the whole car or whatever, like to get that
All
on
right.
the
So I
bumper
have the
sticker.
I have the bumper sticker. It's CB squared C squared.
I thought, how about something like the connective collective?
Sure.
I was like, yeah, it'll do.
It'll
Uh,
do.
Playing on this idea of mentoring, youth mentoring, sort of builds community builders. Then it's like, okay, well, what if we had every young person, like in the high school years, mentor, like a elementary student, to see, hmm, does this young person have, maybe they have those propensities in spades, and maybe for some it kind of builds those community building muscles, and then some will, I'm figuring that some will, it'll like light the spark, and then we'd probably have a lot more community builders emerging. So where do community builders go for uh rejuvenation? I'm picturing like a, a support group for community builders, and as the community builders meet and just share time in each other's company, like you're each like so busy with life and home and the community that you're tending to, be it the wrestling team or the open mic comedy night community or the slam poetry community, these things that are free and open to the public and that help people feel like they're connected to community, especially coming out of carceral settings, coming out of rehab, coming out of higher education with $100,000 of student loan debt, and you want to be a part of community, but maybe the economic side is not so hot at the moment, but psychologically you want to be fully fully vested. And so you have kind of this like next level mentoring program where you have community builders mentor emerging community builders. And then where these communities happen, where you have all of that taking place, an expansion of youth mentoring, the convening of the current community builders that are creating the cultural life of the community at that level that's free and open to the public, gathering um, other community serving leaders that are doing the compassionate work in the community, the constructive as well, and sort of sharing time together with emerging community builders that are maybe feeling these impulses towards community building but don't know what to do with that. And there's the people that are doing it, loving it, really engaged. And you get that process going. And once it's going, it becomes, I think, a self generative process. And then you have you can share that with other community builders. So after you've set one of these up in a community and it's humming along, then you can help other communities build a community builders building community builders, community building community. And you can have like community builders mentoring other communities. And with that insight of change happens along the lines of relationships at the speed of trust, you could have that. Okay, well, let's just start spreading that. So have like a community builder from one community build a friendship with another community builder from another, and then with that, if those two go and share it with another community, they've got the wisdom of two communities that they're bringing them with. And I was looking at the map of the happiest cities in the US, and I noticed that starting in Overland Park, Kansas, which I think comes in at about fifth place, if you make a V kind of going north from Overland Park, Kansas, and you get Lincoln, sixth place, Omaha, 12th place, Madison, Wisconsin, it's up there. Sioux Falls, South Dakota, it's up there, and Bismarck, North Dakota. Those are five of the top 12 happiest cities in the country. And I'm picturing like maybe they didn't intend to be there, but there they are. What if you set up these, for lack of a better word, let's call the whole system of youth mentoring, the support group for community builders, and then the community builders mentoring emerging community builders. Let's just call it a generativity generator. And then you got this like little region of this happening. Let's start where the well-being is already the highest, sort of taking the concept of the mentoring program that gave birth to strength psychology to the community level and see what happens. Anyways, that's I thought deeply about the very thing that you mentioned. Yes. How does any of that strike you?
I think it's been done on, topically based. So there's been some examples of the community builders building community builders, right? There's a lot of these peer cohorts. I ran one in the Southeast Housing Innovation Cohort that brought together 9 cities in the Southeast, where folks were really just learning from each other and leaning on each other, and it made everybody better. It can be what you're describing. It can be mentoring programs. It can be, we have one at the Federal Reserve Bank right now. It's called the Rural Investment Collaborative. When we traveled around to rural communities, we would hear, particularly from investors, there aren't projects to invest in that rural community. And we were like, okay, so we're going to address that. So we have this community investment training where we bring in community leaders. Right now, we're up to 67 communities where we've trained leaders to take an idea and make it a community development project, whether it's affordable housing or a cultural institution or an economic development catalyst. And those folks are part of a cohort. But what it does for that community is it has somebody in that community that they now know has the knowledge and the experience in taking an idea all the way through, the development, the pitch, the funding, the execution. Um, and it just gives that community so much more faith and confidence. It gives them hope, right? That they have somebody in their community they can go to that has access to knowledge and resources to help them. So those 67 communities are now part of this peer cohort, and they get together every couple of months and they learn and grow and they give each other updates. And it's just this incredibly positive, supportive environment. And some folks come discouraged from, the challenges and adversity that they've been dealing with. And when they leave, it is what they tell us more than anything is they feel welcomed, they don't feel judged, they feel supported, and they leave there more hopeful than when they came in.
Awesome. I love it when I think I've created the best thing ever since the invention of sliced bread, and then to realize like it's been done, it's being done, and I'm talking to someone who has that experience. So
I think
it's
we need
it
more of it. I do think we need more of it, Nick, and we need more of it, across different sectors and income levels and types of communities and topical areas. We need more of it.
hopefully in hearing this, maybe we'll have some of those, have some more emerging. So if people would like to find out more about your work, where would you send them?
I would send them to our website at the Richmond Fed, and the website is literally richmondfed.org. And when you get to the website, you can go to regions and communities, and that'll take you to our community development site. So in that, you'll see information about the Center for Rural Economies, our regional data and analysis team, and then the team that I'm on, which is community development and engagement.
Thank you for the information. Thank you for sharing your insight and experience. This has been extremely awesome, I would say. And I hope we can continue the awesomeness, maybe repeat appearances after a couple community builders building community builders, community building, commu- the connective collective, generativity generator. A few of them are going, perhaps, who knows? But thank you so much.
I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate the role that you're serving in your community and around the country in spreading positive psychology and exposing folks to the resources that will improve lives. It will improve outlook, understanding your strengths, the positive psychology. Yeah, all, if nothing else, you're exposing folks to tools that will improve the quality of their life and potentially magnify their impact in their communities, which ideally we're all committed to.
Thank you. I'll have people to listen to this episode of the podcast when they say, "What are you talking about?" It's been a joy. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate the geeking out over this stuff before we even got onto the podcast.
Thank you.